Peace. Welcome to the YouTube live book reading of the African origin of civilization, myth or reality, by the great Dr. Cheikh Anta. Welcome, YouTube. Peace. Surprise. Let's pick up in the third chapter on page 53 in the middle. I'm your moderator and narrator, master fitness trainer, Uriel. So welcome. Thank you for being here live from the light here in LA. We're reading books and learning from masters. Yes. What a beautiful, powerful day, right? The month of May. In the middle, page 53, chapter 3, Modern Falsification of History. Finally, after stating that black skin and woolly hair do not suffice to characterize the Negro race, Champollion Figeac contradicts himself 36 lines later by writing, "Frizzy, woolly hair is the true characteristic of the Negro race." He goes so far as to say that the Egyptians had long hair and that consequently they belonged to the white race. It would appear from that text that the Egyptians were whites with black skin and long hair. Though we may be unaware of existence of such whites, we can try to see how the author reached that conclusion. What has been said about Ethiopians and Copts shows that their hair may be less frizzy than that of other Negroes. Moreover, a completely black race with long hair exists. The Dravidians, considered Negroes in India, and the whites in Africa. He's being funny. Thank you so much for being here. On the monuments, the Egyptians are portrayed with artificial coiffures identical with those worn everywhere in Black Africa. We shall return to these in our analysis of Narmer's tablet. The author concludes by describing the Egyptians' hair as being similar to that of Western whites. We cannot accept that remark, even when the hair of the Egyptian is less woolly than the other of blacks. It is so thick and black as to rule out any possible comparison with thin, light hair of Westerners. Lastly, it is curious to read about long-haired Egyptians when we know that Herodotus described their hair as woolly. Furthermore, as early as the 11th dynasty, blacks, whites, and yellow-skinned men lived in Thebes, just as there are foreigners residing today in Paris. When the Theban wants a luxurious coffin for his mummy, a tree trunk is hollowed out and cut into human shape, with the cover representing the front of the corpse. The face is hidden under a yellow, white, or black color. The choice of coloring shows that in Thebes, under the 11th dynasty, yellow, white, and black men lived, were accepted as fellow citizens, and admitted into the Egyptian necropolis. We may wonder then why only long-haired mummies have survived and why the Negro mummies cited by Fontanes are neither shown nor mentioned. What has become of them? Statements by Herodotus leave no doubt about their existence. Were they considered foreign types, irrelevant to the history of Egypt? Were they destroyed or hidden in the attics of museums? This is an extremely grave subject. Champollion Figeac text continues. Dr. Larry investigated this problem in Egypt. He examined a large number of mummies, studied their skulls, recognized the principal characteristics, tried to identify them in various races living in Egypt, and succeeded in doing so. The Abyssinians seemed to him to combine them all except for the black race. The Abyssinians has large eyes and agreeable glance, prominent cheekbones. The cheeks from form a regular triangle with the prominent angles of the jawbone and mouth. The lips are thick without being everted as in blacks. The teeth are fine, just slightly protruding. Finally, the complexion is merely copper colored. Such are the Abyssinians, observed by Dr. Larry and generally known as Berbers or Barbaras, present day inhabitants of Nubia. Champollion adds that Frederic Khalid, who had seen the Barabas, describes them as industrious, sober, with dry humor. Their hair is half frizzy, short, and curly, or braided like the ancient Egyptians and slightly oiled. This description once again sounds familiar. Thick lips, teeth slightly protruding. In clearer terms, prognathism. That's right. Semi frizzy hair, copper skin are basic characteristics of the Negro race. Peace. Highest heart love. Welcome. Thank you for reading books with us. This peaceful part of YouTube where we read books and learn from masters. We're in the third chapter of The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality by Dr. Cheikh Anta and edited and translated by Mercer Cook, 1967. So thank you so much for being here. Reading this ancient information with us live from the light. Pure light. That's right. All the goodness and greatness. It is curious to note here that Champollion Figeac speaks of the Abyssinian complexion as being merely coppered colored. Yet, 2 pages later in the same chapter, he refers as follows to the many color nuances of the Negro. Top of page 55 of chapter 3. Lengthy wars had brought Egypt into contact with the African interior. Thus, one distinguishes on Egyptian monuments several species of blacks, differing among themselves in the principal features that modern travelers have listed as dissimilarities, either with respect to complexion, which makes Negroes black or copper colored, or with respect to other features no less typical. This new contradiction from the same pen confirms what we have said about the two men placed next to the god Horus, namely the Egyptian and the Negro. These two men belong to the same race. There is no more color difference between them than between a Bambara and a Wolof, who are both Negroes. The so called dark red color of the first, the merely copper colored of the Abyssinian, and the copper color of the Negro are one and the same. We note in passing that the author's description tarries over insignificant details such as an agreeable glance and so on. The confusion over the term Berber must be pointed out. This too is a word improperly applied to populations of the Nile Valley. That is a word improperly have nothing in common with those properly called Berber and Tuareg. There are no Berber in Egypt. On the contrary, we know that North Africa was called Barbary, the Barbary states. This area is the only real inhabitant of the Berber. Subsequently, the term was incorrectly applied to other populations. The root of this word, used during antiquity, was probably of Negro rather than Indo-European origin. In reality, it is an onomatopoeic repetition of the root burr. This is key. This kind of intensification of a root is general in African languages, especially in Egyptian. The onomatopoeic repetition of the root burr. This kind of intensification of a root is general in African languages, especially in Egyptian. Moreover, the root bar in Wolof means to speak rapidly, and barbar would designate a people that speaks an unknown language, therefore a foreign people. In Wolof, especially in adjective indicating nationality is formed by doubling the root. For example, Djolof or Djolof, inhabitants of Djolof, reproducing the bas relief of Biban el Muluk according to the drawing of Champollion the Younger, Champollion Figeac, not did not respect the colors of the original. He completely shaded in the Negro's body to remind us of his color, but avoided doing the same for the Egyptian, whom he left untinted. This is perhaps one way to whiten the latter, but it is not consistent with the document. Cherubini, Champollion's travel companion, utilizes the same Biban el Malak document to characterize the Egyptian race. He insists beforehand on the anteriority of Ethiopia to Egypt and cities the unanimous opinion of the ancients that Egypt is merely a colony of Ethiopia, that is, Sudanese Meroitic. Throughout antiquity, the Meroitic Sudan was even believed to be the birthplace of humanity. Ooh. And we have to put a pin here. Page 56 at the top. That pin was dropped for this last sentence. I will repeat. We're in the third chapter. Peace, highs, heart, love. Divine days and nights. Live from the light. This is beautiful. So gorgeous. Throughout antiquity, the Meroitic Sudan was even believed to be the birthplace of humanity. The human race must have been considered there as spontaneous, having been born in the upper areas of Ethiopia, where the two sources of life, heat and humidity, are ever present. It is also in this region that the first glimmerings of history reveal the origin of societies and the primitive home of civilization. In the earliest antiquity, before the ordinary calculations of history, a social organization appears fully structured with its religion, laws, and institutions. The Ethiopians boasted of having been the first to establish worship of the divinity and the use of sacrifices. There, too, the torch of science and the arts was probably first lightened. To this people, we must attribute the origin of sculpture, the use of written symbols, in short, the start of all the developments that make up an advanced civilization. They boasted of having preceded the ellipsis. They boasted of having preceded the other peoples on earth, and about the real or relative superiority of their civilization while most societies were still in their infancy, and they seemed to justify their claims. No evidence attributed to any other source than beginnings of the Ethiopian family. On the contrary, a combination of very important facts tended to assign it a purely local origin at an early date. Mm. Ethiopia was considered as a country apart from this more or less paradi- paradisiacal source. The beginnings of life, the origin of living beings, seem to emanate, except for some particulars furnished by the father of history on those Ethiopians known as Macrobians. There was a rather hazy idea that Ethiopia produced men who surpassed the rest of humanity in height, beauty, and longevity. One nevertheless recognized two great indigenous nations in Africa, the Libyans and the Ethiopians. The latter included the southernmost peoples of the black race. They were thus distinguished from the Libyans, who, occupying the north of Africa, were less tanned by the sun. Such is the information that the ancients have provided. It is reasonable to assume that nowhere else on earth could we find a civilization whose progress would seem more certain and present such unquestionable evidences of priority. Consistent with the original monuments and the writings of scholarly philosophical antiquity authentically testify this anteriority. In the history of primitive societies, perhaps no fact is supported by more complete and more decisive unanimity. Page 57. Once again, a modern reminds us that the ancients, the very scientists and philosophers who have transmitted present day civilization to us, from Herodotus to Diodorus, from Greece to Rome, unanimously recognize that they borrowed that civilization from blacks on the banks of the Nile, Ethiopians or Egyptians. This text clearly indicates that the ancients never questioned the Negro's role as an initiator of civilization. The truth is the truth. Let that light shine. Let the truth be the truth. This new moon, so powerful, especially with Mercury conjunction. And now we have it there with Uranus. Jupiter is waiting in Gemini. Let's continue, shall we? All right. Thank you so much. Highest heart love. Thank you so much for reading with us. Divine days and nights. Yeah, we light bend here. And this is our light bending day and time. So keep it coming. Here we go. Yet Cherubini nonetheless interprets the facts as he wishes. On the strength of the Biban el Mullah bas relief after Champollion the Younger and Champollion Fijiac, he supplies no new element concerning the Egyptian race, except a wrong interpretation of its complexion. He reports that if the Ra'en Eni Rome man par excellence is depicted in a reddish brown color. It is in order that he may be distinguished from the rest of mankind. Thus, it is purely conventional choice. Mhm. In this classification of men of antiquity that they themselves have bequeathed to us, we see the African population of the Nile Valley constituting by itself alone one of the four divisions of humanity and invariably occupying the first rank next to the god. This order is observed in several other places and does not appear to be due to chance. To make the distance separating them from other men more readily discernible, they attributed to themselves as well as to the God incarnate in human form. A reddish brown color, perhaps a bit exaggerated or even somewhat conventional, which left no doubt about the originality of their race. They characterized it, moreover, on the monuments of their ancient civilization by special features which would disclose an unquestionable African origin. The reddish brown color that Champollion called dark red, and which is quite simply Negro colored, could not be a conventional color, as Cherubini suggests. If it were, it would be the only conventional color on that bas reliefs, whereas all the others are natural. There is no doubt about the reality of the white clothes worn by the first man, or the flesh colored bordering on yellow complexion or tan tint of the third, or white skin on the most delicate shade, the blonde beard and eyes on of the fourth. Among so many natural colors, why should only one be conventional? Powerful. It's powerful. Logic. You know, that's how we have to do it. Critically think. When you critically think, you're like, oh, wait. So they're telling me that, hmm, all the other colors are contemporary, are not contemporary, are old, are traditional. But they just happen to paint the ones that were closest to the Most High as that was color was just off, huh? My dad, here's a gem for you. My dad always says this. This is all the way up light. My dad says, can't make sense out of nonsense. It's never going to make sense. According to Cherubini, the Egyptians carried their classification and more precisely their racial pride so far as to establish the most clear cut distinction between themselves and their native African neighbors, such as the Negro populations with whom they were loath to be confused and whom they place in a separate category. The Egyptians went even further and represented their god in the Negro color, i.e., in their own image, coal black. The idea of anything conventional is thus to be rejected purely and simple. So after Champollion Figeac, it is Cherubini who sees the same Biban el Malak document through blinkers. In this connection, we may appropriately repeat that what was said earlier. By running away from the evidence of a Negro origin, the specialists fall into improbabilities and dead end contradictions. Only such blindness can explain how Cherubini found it reasonable to resort to a conventional representation which contradicts his own opinion on the Egyptians and which they too would have found inadmissible. The author invokes the bas reliefs of the Abu Simbel temple, Lower Nubia, where prisoners captured by Sestris after an expedition toward the south are portrayed. Cherubini reproduces these in attempt to demonstrate that Egyptians and blacks belong to two different races. And we'll pause right here. I don't want to done amazing work so far reading. Let you enjoy the rest of this beautiful, delightful, wonderful day. Divine days and nights. Yeah, getting it done. Thank you so much for the likes and subs. We're pushing towards 700 on this peaceful part of YouTube where we read books and learn from masters. So thank you so much for reading with us. Highest heart love. All right. So when we reconvene in the third chapter, like I said, we'll be here. This is a very long chapter, dispelling all the nonsense. So he had to take his time and dissect them. He does it masterfully as well. Thank you so much for reading books with us. Highest heart love. The African Origin of Civilization, Myth or Reality by Dr. Cheikh Anta, edited and translated by Mercer Cook. All right. Wow. What a beautiful, beautiful reading. Powerful, too. Yeah. Let's have a glass of love water as send you out on the rest of your day, shaking it up on YouTube, right? Reading high level master books. Yeah, we're back. I'll put the vocabulary in the description and we'll put it in the playlist. So grateful and thankful for all I have now and all that's coming to me. I love you. Love and honor to our friends and families, to all those solar returns. We love you so much. Eyes, heart, love. Mm. Oh, that's some great love water. Oh, just what I needed. I had a wonderful workout on the Bosu again. Woo! Put it in. I've been getting it in. I love my Bosu bowl. It's one of my favorite tools and gifts. Thank you so much. All right. Yeah. Oh, it's cool. Thank you. Highest heart love. Gratitude. Let's say I love you to the world as we're shining this light out, right? Light bending. That's what we have to do. All right. Here we go. Ay, 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 ay. Love, 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 love you, you, you. Ay, 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 ay. Love, 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 love you, 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 you. You know it, because I love myself. Thank you so much for being here and reading with us. I'll see you soon when we reconvene. Chapter 3. Peace.